the relationship between stories and emotion? Who comes first? And
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in a lot of the trainings that I lead, one of the places that I start is talking about paradigms. And I think when a story becomes a collective story that's so strong and that we are conditioned in or that we inherit, it becomes a paradigm. So, for example, I think a really strong collective story or a paradigm that we're in at the moment is a paradigm of leadership, which is, you could say, a bit parent-child, like a dynamic that's a bit like a parent towards a child. And I think the movements that we're seeing, many different movements in kind of new ways of working, the future of work, are all moving towards, I would say, a more adult style of relating, which is kind of, it's kind of a process that I often coach people through, which is, first acknowledge that we're in a paradigm, and in many ways we're blind to it. And there are many other paradigms that we're in as well, kind of dominant paradigms. But the first step is to see it. And then you have a choice, right? You can act more from choice rather than automatically. And you can choose and create other stories. So you can choose to relate to someone's potential, for example, if you realize that, oh, actually, my giving advice automatically is in part because I've had a story that I know better, or that person isn't fully capable, or, and it's not always, bad intentions or conscious, but I think recognizing that we have these stories is really useful. And I think as I was listening to both of you talk just then, and thinking about the pandemic and a lot of the big issues that we're facing today, like climate change is another one, thinking about this hero's journey, another model that I like is like the crisis curve, or the grief curve, it's sometimes called, which is sort of like, if you imagine the hero's journey as a circle, it's the same shape, really. It's like a U. Otto Scharmer and his work of theory U is a similar idea, where when we're faced with a story that's confronting, like your quote, your Viktor Frankl quote, despair, when there's no meaning, I think we can be a bit scared to stay in the bottom of the U, to sort of embrace feelings of grief and sadness and loss and fear, because of the way our brains are wired. And a book that was really influential for me was a book called Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect by Matthew Lieberman. And I was really struck by what he said about how the brain knows no difference between social pain and actual pain. So, when we have feelings of lack of meaning, or, isolation, or fear of rejection, or I don't belong, our brain is designed to protect itself. And our brain is always designed to find the path of least resistance and shortcuts and habits. So what becomes dangerous then, thinking about what you were saying, Aditi, is that when we see, fake news stories, for example, that confirm something that makes my life easier. Oh, good. If I believe that, that's much simpler. Well, that gives some meaning, and I don't need to confront anything difficult. Then I'll go for that. And if there are people in that tribe, even better. Now I feel like I belong. I'm not alone. I'm not stupid. So I find that really interesting, that it's much easier to do that than what I think is really needed, the shift that's really needed, which is for us to be much more willing to stay in the bottom of the curve, to sit with those feelings, which is painful and difficult and takes courage. Because if we can do that, I think we can start to come out the other side with a new story, reorienting, finding some meaning, and then we can take action. But I really think that like change and finding another story, for that to really work, I'm feeling more and more that it needs to be emotional and embodied. So it can't be an intellectual thing. And I have to give credit to Meg Lightheart, whose work I really admire. And it was her that said that first to me, that if the changes or the shifts that we're looking to make are not emotional and embodied, then I really question whether we're going deep enough.